Hey everyone, Enrique here. Welcome to another review. Finally, we are finishing the reviews for X-Men 97 for today. And until next season 3, no more reviews on Wednesdays. So, yeah, we are finishing it here. But it was good that I managed to take a look to all these episodes. With all that being said, let's talk about the final episode of this season called Survival of the Fittest. Honestly, an appropriate title. But it's pretty much the Civil War episode in which we see two factions of mutants fighting against each other for one goal to prevent Apocalypse's return by killing Gambit. So, yeah, this is going to be intense. So, what is the episode about? Well, let's recap on what happened here. As Rogue, Nightcrawler, and Beast go into Mothership, in which they encounter the ship, as I mentioned before, is the ship that they encountered in season 3, but also the one ship that comes from the Celestials that embody or imbue Ensavanur with the powers of Celestials and make him into Apocalypse. They're going in there in order to figure out how to stop it. If the ship gave the powers to Apocalypse, surely they must know a way to stop Apocalypse as well. Every off switch, right? Well, as we see them figuring out what to do, we see that the rest of the X-Men are established in the X-Corp facility, in the X-Corp building, and raising up the defenses against not only Val Cooper and Cable, but the majority of the X-Factor members, also Psylocke and Archangel, two of the remaining members of X-Force, and as well a group of humans who are using mech Sentinels. So yeah, they're still using Sentinels, but now under the control of the human race. But needless to say, everybody in this episode is just doing a lot of fight sequences. We see, as we see the teams trying to defend our fallen comrade, we see Rogue making a bargain with the Celestial Ensign. Now, this Celestial being has said before that in order to create life, there has to be an amount of death. Something that Rogue doesn't agree with, and she starts to punch to the point in which she starts to be very damaged. She's trying to find an impossible odd against a godlike being like the Celestial Ensign in order to find a way to save Gambit from Apocalypse. So Ensign decides to do that. He actually sees the conviction in Rogue and imbues her with the powers of the Celestial for a moment at least, but it also means that she has to sacrifice herself, because in order for Gambit to be saved, she has to surrender her life to Ensign in some way. So she does that. She gets imbued with the powers of the Celestial and flies at full speed into Genosha. And as she says goodbye to Beast and Nightcrawler, especially her brother Nightcrawler, he starts to notice something. He noticed something in the way she said goodbye to him that makes him realize something happened inside that made Rogue feel that way. But yeah, during that time, we see a lot of fight scenes through the X-Men and the remaining other mutants in the other factions. We see Psylocke and Archangel fighting Wolverine and morphing as Dr. Octopus. That is so cool to see. We see Jubilee on the jet fighting against Havoc in the other jet, and I gotta say, Havoc is not only impressed by Jubilee's abilities to control her powers as well as for the flying usage of the jet. You might say that he's a little bit proud because Havoc during this episode always acted like Cyclops in the original animated series, always like a Boy Scout, always following orders no matter what. He always abides to the orders that he's giving into. But here not so much. He starts to question Bao's decisions as well as Cable's actions as to kill one of their own. Because he does, well, Havoc might be, like a good general in a fight. He's not stupid. He is not blinded by the orders, and he knows that if he does this, it could declare war on the mutant race, which is something that he's not wrong, as we are about to see later on. But needless to say, he is impressed by Jubilee. We also see fight sequences between Polaris and Bishop fighting against the remaining members of X Factor. We see fighting multiple men, Strong Guy, Wolfsbane, and I think Banshee's daughter Screech, if that's her name, or maybe she, or it's just a female Banshee. But I truly think that might be Banshee's daughter. I don't know, maybe so. But regardless, as the two of them are defending Gambit from the remaining members of X Factor. But most importantly, we see Cable fighting against Cyclops and Jean, which is heartbreaking, but it is just showing how convicted Cable is into killing Apocalypse. He has been drilled all his life that he has to finish Apocalypse once and for all before he starts causing a lot of damage. And that meant that he had to be against his parents in some way because he couldn't let Apocalypse go. He is so committed or blinded, if you will, to his role as to destroy Apocalypse and the worst kind of evil. But that's something that a lot of people pose the question on the internet. If killing Apocalypse and stopping this greater evil something good, or it's just making that evil just different in a different way. Okay, so let me explain. Cable obviously has the same goal of stopping Apocalypse because he has done a lot of damage. But the question is Apocalypse need to be stopped like that? Because are we now resorting to the same methods that he normally uses to destroy his enemies? Because that's what he always does. He always uses very underneath methods in order to stop his enemies. And Cable is not that far from the latter. And that's something that both Scott and Jean are trying to knock some sense into him, because what's the point of killing Apocalypse if you're going to resort to the same brutal tactics as he does? And that is something that we see throughout the episode, and maybe that was the theme of the entire season as a whole. Like, the reason why I think they use Apocalypse, other than just making the original bad guy return, was to pose the question, are we going to be submit to our own basic instincts as our enemies do that as well? Like, using strength alone in order to destroy the enemy, using brutal tactics in order to gain information from a person, or even lying to the people in order to accomplish their goals. We saw that time and time again in the past. We saw that in the first episode of this season, how Cable was destined to become a great leader for the Resistance, and how Scott and Jean didn't want to see him as a weapon. How Jubilee and Sunspot didn't want to resort to the same tactics as Cable, Psylocke, and Archangel into killing their enemies and having a little bit more humanity. Hell, even the episode where Wolverine lies to his team as well as Morph in order to get adamantium, that could be pretty much what they were foreshadowing in this episode. And that's pretty much the theme of this entire season. But yeah, that is something that I finally come to realize. But in the end, as they fight, we see that Nathan decides to burst in and kill Gambit, who was waking up, helping Polaris and Bishop, but eventually Cable just shoots his gun to his head, And unfortunately, that doesn't stop him as Apocalypse rises up again and starts to take over Gambit's body, making him into, I don't know, Gambit Apocalypse, if you will, or just a Gambit version of Apocalypse as he starts to take over. He starts to possess the members of X-Men, and he starts to taunt Charles into, saying, you have failed to learn the lesson yet again that the people that you care about are your undoing, which is something that pretty much comes into play to the mentality of Apocalypse. As we saw throughout these episodes, we see him that he doesn't trust people, he doesn't like people. External took away his powers, or took away part of his powers that he gave to her, that he gave to her out of love. How he feels like his mother abandoned him, how he was a slave, how he was manipulated in some degrees by Charles and Magneto in the past, how he felt like in order for him to become stronger, he had to stand alone as a god, that if he becomes a god, he won't feel pain. And in the end, that is something that Charles opposes to. Charles, throughout the season, also begs the question of how to move on, how to defeat Apocalypse without Magneto. And that is something that now he's come face to face. And despite everything that he's put against, including possessing all the members of X-Men and even Cable, he still stands his ground saying no. He doesn't believe what Apocalypse says because people are how we survive. And that comes into the picture when Rogue flies in and opposes to Apocalypse. And using her powers of absorbing the powers from other mutants, she uses it imbued with the power of Celestial to trap the consciousness of Apocalypse inside another diamond crystal. And she gives it to Cable, knowing that he will figure out a way to do with it. Like, he now has Apocalypse in the palm of his hands, but now the question is, what's he going to do with it? Well, that question is not resolved in this episode, as we see Rogue and Gambit finally reuniting with each other, sharing a kiss that we wanted to see from them for a long time. We've seen them kiss before, but never on this type of circumstances. And finally, as we see her be the power of the celestial power that she had, she starts to realize she hasn't died. Like, it requires sacrifice for her to, to save Gambit, but she felt like it was going to be her, only to realize as she sees a ship where Beast is carrying the Bible, meaning that Nightcrawler went into the celestial place in order to talk to Ensign, and he decides to sacrifice himself for Rogue. And he believes that with this sacrifice, that his memory of him will allow to be a seed of growing good memories from each other, from the rest of the X-Men. And as we see that in this montage, we see all of them reuniting together. Charles start to teach classes to the young mutants, as well as we see Jubilee and Sunspot talking to the young generation. We see Polaris and Bishop sharing a date, and a lot more. And even see Gambit and Rogue finally in each other's arms, looking at the sky and praying, or at the very least happy, content that they are together. Yet there's a somber that Nightcrawler is not there, but Nightcrawler says that it's okay because he has faith. And that's how we end the episode, with a huge sacrifice for our beloved character, Nightcrawler. So, what about Nightcrawler's sacrifice? What do I think of it? It's really hard-hitting, but I got to admit, it is something that it's in character with Nightcrawler because he's a man of religious beliefs. He's a man who is a Catholic, who believes that good memories, good people, good souls could be redeemed. That no matter what happens, that he will choose to do the right thing, even if he means that his own life is in jeopardy, in order to save people's lives. And that is something that is so beautiful about Kurt. He is such a great soul, such a great character that he's willing to put his body on the line in his entire soul against a celestial, a godlike being, in order to save his own sister. And that's who Nightcrawler is for Rogue. Rogue is Nightcrawler's sister, no matter what, no matter the circumstances or how their parents treated them. It doesn't matter because he believes that that's his sister, and that's what it is. And I like that. And it's a shame because I really was hoping that maybe Kurt will find a way to make a bargain with the Celestial without a sacrifice. But I realized, what would have been the point? The Celestial asked for a sacrifice, and Nightcrawler just decided to complete the challenge, but without Rogue being the one who pays the price. It's such a humane thing for Kurt to do, and my God, he is amazing. He is just the greatest, honestly. And I really hope that this is not the end, because I want to see Kurt back with Colossus. Those two in episode 7 were the highlights of that entire episode. And let me just say, with Colossus now with the X-Men, this could be a great opportunity for him to just serve as the same role. But I hope the Nightcrawler comes back in some form or fashion so he can, have more interactions with Colossus as well. Because, hey, if Gambit could revive from the dead, so why not Nightcrawler? Even supposing that he is still, dead. Because we don't know what happened to him. So that's how it is. Now, let's talk about the post-credit scene, because it's going to lead up into what is going to happen in Season 3 of X-Men 97. So, what happened after this entire episode? Well, as all the mutants are trying to fight each other in order to stop Apocalypse, we see that everybody in the anti-mutant agenda have finally got their wish, as Graydon Creed has now become the president of the United States, meaning that life for the mutants are going to be even more complicated. But just as complicated as we saw in that final scene, we also see that Val Cooper is shot by Mystique of all people. And here's the thing, that there was a rumor in this show that people said that maybe Val Cooper was actually Mystique in disguise. Well, you're about to get that wish, because even if it wasn't Mystique before, now she is, as she's now determined to attack the United States of America and using the Brotherhood of Mutants to do her goals. So that means that we're going to see Mystique using her shape-shifting skills to cause a lot of mayhem in the government and in the USA. So yeah, that's what we ended up with. And I think here's what are going to be my predictions for Season 3 now that we are finally ending this season. What are my thoughts on what is going to happen in Season 3? Well, now with Graydon Creed as Commander-in-Chief, he's probably going to make more laws that are going to be against mutants, deputize more people in Mech Sentinels, as we saw them in this episode, in order to capture or even kill mutants at the first view. Maybe even make more laws and make more government sanctioned death squads in order to capture and destroy mutants. And it's going to make life difficult for Xavier because he has just started to create a school for the young gifted, for all the mutants who were captured and now are now placed in the Xavier Mansion. But now with Grayson Creed under this new leadership in the U.S., is gonna make more difficult. But more complicated to that is how Mystique is going to use this for her own agenda. Now that we learned that Kurt sacrificed himself for the Celestials in order to save Rogue, and most likely is going to make Mystique very, very angry and very, very upset with everybody. So she's going to probably use this as an opportunity to not only destabilize his own son's government, because remember, Kurt is not only the son of Mystique, but also Mystique has a child with Grayson Creed. In this case, Grayson Creed Jr. is her son, and Sabretooth is the father. So that means that things are just going to get complicated. And it most likely is going to mean the return of Mystique and Sabretooth realizing that their own son, Graydon, is going to cause more problems for mutants. And she's going to use that probably to attack all the humans in the world, cause a war, and maybe to avenge, in some ways, to avenge her son's death, if she believes that. And that's the case. But we don't know. We don't know for sure. I mean, this could also mean she could be also doing something for another person, and she might be having another agenda. But we don't know. I just know that Mystique is going to cause a lot of problems for both mutants and humans, even though her intentions is to save the mutant race. But we don't know. Mystique is always not only shifting from people to people, but also from side to side. So we have to wait and see. In any case, we also see that this is all going to be a problem for Xavier. And let me just predict this right now, because a lot of people have said it online. What if all this that happens could lead to Xavier's psyche to break? Like, it was broken before by Apocalypse, but now it could break even further. A lot of fans are speculating that maybe, just maybe, this could mean that Xavier is going to resort to Magneto's more savage, more, more questionable decisions and actions in order to save the mutant race. But most likely, it's going to make him more and more unhinged. And this could lead up to, as many people have speculated, he's becoming of being the most evil or the most nefarious villain in the not just the Marvel universe, but also the X-Men universe, Onslaught. I gotta think that this might all lead up to that moment. And maybe the X-Men are going to realize once again how to stop this and how to prevent another war, because they have seen terrible futures before, and this could become a reality if that happens. They have to figure out a way. I also predict that maybe, just maybe, we're gonna see more people introduced to the X-Men. Maybe Kitty Pryde has the opportunity to be introduced here and have a romance with Colossus. Maybe Havoc is going to discover that Scott Summers, Scott's Cyclops, is actually his brother that he thought he lost. Maybe Scott realizes that Alex is his brother. Maybe we don't know what happened to Cable afterwards, so I would assume that maybe Scott and Jane are trying to look for Cable. I don't know. Maybe we get another adventure into space, but we have to wait and see. But that's all my thoughts on the matter. So, to conclude and to make this short, Season 2 and the finale was good, but I have to admit, I was expecting something a little bit more in something a little bit more bombastic on how they handle Apocalypse. Thankfully, Apocalypse is not there, so that means that we could see him in the near future, and it could be the subject of another great finale. But I wish that this season had a little bit more of a focus on how to handle Apocalypse, a little bit more focus on how to deal with the characterization of some characters. I would welcome for the episodes to be a little bit longer. Like, don't do this into under 22 minutes. Don't do this on a half an hour. Trying to expand it. Do this in 1 hour. And since this season only had 9 episodes, we were, I think, robbed, or at the very least, of a few more episodes. So, in my opinion, if you ask me, I think this is a great opportunity for the show to look back at that, maybe fix some of the mistakes that this season have, like maybe lack of time, lack of focus, maybe more focus on characters that we want to see. I want to see what happens between Cable and his parents, Scott and Jean. Maybe see how Scott deals with having his brother be an X Factor. Some more resolutions on Charles' psyche, maybe more of an expansion on some of the characters that we haven't seen before. Maybe an episode between Wolverine and Morph, but this time with Morph and Wolverine at the same time, and not just Morph taking the majority of the episode. Maybe see what happens between Rogue and Gambit now that they are free from everything that happened to them before. See how Colossus deals with being an X-Men again. How Charles' psyche is starting to break, and just expand a little bit more. And hopefully, season 3 will be as bombastic as the previous ones, even better. But in any case, I enjoy this season as a whole. I'm looking forward for next season. And hey, we all want to see what happens with the movies as well. I'm gonna get my thoughts on what could happen in the movie, but that's something for later. Until then, that's it for my reviews of X-Men 97. So this is the last one for Wednesdays until season 3. So that's gonna be just reviews for Friday from now on. What do you guys think of X-Men 97 in season 2? Let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. So I've been Enrique, and talk to you later.